Hello there.
This is where the fun begins.
I honestly don't even know what I'm going to be talking about in this video. All I know is that it's going to be about The Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 13, titled Pabu. Of course, I mean that in the sense that there isn't a lot to really talk about and break down regarding Easter eggs or things that you might have missed throughout this episode. Either which way, we're going to go ahead and hop right on into it. Welcome to my review of Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 13, titled Pabu. First things first, of course, I want to throw it out there. It should go without saying that yes, there are spoilers ahead, so if you haven't already, go check it out. Although I can't necessarily say that the episode is the best episode or the most amazing thing out there, I'm honestly really conflicted and torn with this one, to be honest with you guys. For those of you that, of course, are very consistent with watching my channel and my Bad Batch reviews especially, or maybe if you follow us over on our Instagram, Unofficial Star Wars, linked in the description down below, you guys would know that I'm a huge lover of The Bad Batch. I have defended it time in and time out with its slower episodes or more filler episodes and that type of thing, but this episode, guys, I'm being completely transparent and honest with you guys, I just did not like one bit. There's honestly no denying it, and there's nothing I can defend it for. Nothing happened in this episode. It felt like something that you might see on Disney Junior, which there's nothing wrong with that. I used to love Disney Junior back in my day. But to be completely honest with you guys, this episode was just so boring to me. Although I'm not a hater, I'm not trying to be a hater or anything like that, there are still a few good things here and there about this episode for The Bad Batch, which I'll point out now. For one thing, I heard a couple of people point out that this episode looks visually good, just overall, compared to, Andor, or maybe the Mandalorian episode that we also got. So, of course, sure, the animation and the visuals for this episode, of course, are meeting that criteria and look pretty good. And I heard some other people also pointing out the big thing about this episode that kind of went over a lot of people's heads, including myself, is that the point of this episode is kind of showing that these characters that have only known war their entire lives are able to finally settle down and get some peace. And so when I saw this and I heard about this, I kind of, soaked it in. I'm like, okay, that's a really good point. These are characters, the Bad Batch, that have only known war, like, their entire life. That goes for all the clone troopers that have served in the Clone Wars, of course. So beginning to see these characters, the Bad Batch themselves, phase out of that kind of, like, always on the run and just trying to always hide from the Empire type of thing, always on the move type of thing, always having a war or something, some type of conflict to deal with, seeing them being able to finally lay low a little bit here is something that's different, and I didn't even really notice it all that much. And it also is kind of paralleling in the same aspects with the normal regular clones and how they're kind of settling down after being phased out officially, politically wise, that we saw by the Galactic Empire themselves phasing them out from the Galactic Senate there, and those episodes, which were pretty cool to see there as well. So seeing all these different characters, all the clones in the galaxy are starting to settle down, things, are kind of weird. You've only seen these, characters always doing war, always having a conflict. So seeing these characters actually settle down, I think, is probably my biggest takeaway from this episode, and it makes me curious to see, is this kind of like how the show is going to end? Which is something that I find very, very interesting. Now, I want to take a read from dorksideoftheforce.com. I'll have their article linked in the description down below for you guys to check out there as well. As a read, as we hurtle towards the finale of Season 2 of Star Wars The Bad Batch, we see that Fee, the pesto pirate, comes into her own key of being that main supporter of the overall squad. Those familiar with Hondo were probably suspicious of her intentions at first, but this episode seems to indicate that she is more than meets the eye, and possibly a genuine ally to the Bad Batch, as it really does seem. We also see that Tech and Fee are building some type of relationship at the same time as well. While she may be an ally to the Bad Batch in general, she has a special connection to Tech. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of weird at times, but even since Fee was introduced, she especially liked, quote-unquote, calling Tech Brown Eyes as kind of his name, and I'm sitting there like they all have brown eyes. But anyway, much of this season has focused on Tech and his growing emotional intelligence. We have gotten to know much more how the war has shaped all of the Bad Batch's perceptions. They never got any childhood. With them being different than the rest of the clones, it seems even less likely that they would have developed relationships with other clones outside of themselves. This is why Tech and Fee are such an interesting match. He is the most distant of all of the Bad Batch, and doesn't really correlate all that much with the rest of them, which is honestly the sad truth. But it does seem that Fee is able to look past that occasionally cold exterior of Tech and value who he really is. In this episode, we also see quickly an update on Sid and like what she's doing, and she's been gone for 20 rotations. Rotations are, assuming, are like the same as kind of like days in the Star Wars universe. I think that makes sense. One of the major themes for this season is that the Bad Batch is finally breaking away from Sid. Even after the Bad Batch saves her multiple times on multiple occasions, she still just seems like an asset to be leveraged for her own gain. She only really cares about herself at the end of the day. And we finally have this conflict come to a head as Sid threatens to give them up to the Empire, which could cause trouble and be a problem in the future of this season, or maybe even future seasons of the Bad Batch, which is a concern of mine that I'll discuss in just a moment. Especially now with Crosshair on Mount Tantus and the Empire actively looking for Omega, as they believe that she is still out there and they need her. It seems that the winds have changed as this plot is beginning to, I guess, blow in a different direction. Sid has proven that she is not loyal to anyone but herself, and even the questionable characters that the Bad Batch have protected from Sid have warned them that she is not to be trusted. The real question is just how long she will go to make a profit from these guys. Now, I wanted to discuss here quickly about future seasons of the Bad Batch. We're starting to see the batch, the squad here, settle down more and more, it feels like, and they seem that they're going to be sticking around on Pabu, this very peaceful planet that's kind of like Space Hawaii pretty much, settling down there for a couple of rotations. So they kind of seem to be living the life. So what's going to disrupt them from wanting to get up and leave from here? Of course, unless the Empire comes in, which in all total fairness is probably going to happen. However, I love the Bad Batch and I want there to be more and more seasons, even more seasons of Clone Wars or Rebels. I think would be really, honestly, really awesome to see, really fun to see. Also, seeing that there isn't necessarily any narrow plot that the Batch seem to be following all that much either is a little bit of a quandary, I think, out there that makes me worry about future seasons of this show. Whether or not they get a happy ending or not, it feels like even then the show could just downright be cancelled, like we saw with Rebels. Anyway, aside from that, as I had also mentioned, or the article has, about the Batch not necessarily having that normal life as the rest of the clones might have, that same kind of relationships that we saw throughout the Clone Wars, the absence of childhood of Omega, and comparing that and paralleling that with the rest of the Bad Batch. When looking at the major players in Omega's life, they prioritize her learning the skills of becoming a warrior. Phee was raised with a more normal background and values, learning that the people skills that are just necessary for surviving out in the galaxy. We also see that the episode named is a nod towards Phee's role in Omega's life, as Pabu can mean auntie. We can also see that Phee is acting as an auntie who is concerned for Omega's happiness and her overall well-being, and also as possible partner to Tech, which then again I find kind of weird, strange. We also get to see Omega laughing in Tech's observations that she hadn't laughed like that in a while. Just indicates of what we have suspected here, that she might want to not live as a soldier and maybe live as a kid here on this planet and be left here actually with Phee and the rest of the gang on Pabu. Maybe the rest of the batch will take off finally, leaving Omega behind, maybe visiting later on. She is living as a soldier and desperately needs some normal relationships. This is something that Phee also points out. It seems like Pabu would be an ideal place for that, but we can be certain that something will disrupt that, and that sanctuary to be pulled from the Bad Batch off to save their friends. As I had mentioned, maybe the Empire. Anyway, from there, that is where the article concludes, and as I had mentioned at the beginning of this video, I have this article linked in the description down below for you guys to check out there as well. This article honestly opens up my eyes, I think, a little bit more to what this episode does actually give to us here as Star Wars fans. As I had mentioned, like at the beginning of this video, I just said I downright hated this episode, and I don't really feel like that's the case anymore all that much now, and how we're able to kind of see some of those takeaways and those main values that this episode kind of provided. I do really hope that Omega stays on Pabu with Phee, not because she's annoying. I love Omega, of course, but that's just what realistically makes sense, and I would hope that they would go down the path of what makes realistically sense to kind of make things feel a little bit more realistic. I know what you might be thinking, for crying out loud, it's Star Wars, it's not supposed to be realistic whatsoever, but just, thinking strategically, I feel like the Bad Batch would want to leave her in, out of harm's way, in safety, pretty much. Anyway, I would love to hear all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. What did you guys think about this episode? Did you think it was god-awful? Maybe this video helped you open up your eyes a little bit more, as it kind of did for myself. Maybe not the best episode, of course, but not necessarily the worst thing that I've ever seen. So there you guys have it. I would love to hear what you guys all think in the comment section down below. Of course, this has been Unofficial Star Wars, and thank you so much for watching today's video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great one, guys. May the Force be with you as always. Peace out.